This happened when I was 26 years old. I was working at a pretty big company. I thought that I had it made, you know? I had just graduated from university, and I had landed a really decent job. I quickly realized that not everything was as it seemed. I tried to stick it out, but man, I hated that job. They took advantage of me. Every holiday request I put in was denied, and the hours were way longer than advertised. I saw no progression there, and everyone was horrible. I was exhausted and underappreciated, so I quit. I had to get another job, and pretty quick too, if I wanted to afford rent. I took a temp job in sales. It wasn't as stressful, and it wasn't as respected, but I finally achieved a nice kind of work-life balance. One thing I had to change though was my apartment. I used to live in a pretty swanky place downtown, but I couldn't afford it on the new job's salary, so I had to move somewhere a little bit cheaper. My new place was okay, I guess. I didn't really have as much space, but it was decent enough. But then something strange happened. It happened when I was about a month and a half into my life in that apartment. I got home kind of late that night. I ran a bath while I was heating up my dinner. I took my bath at around 11 p.m. I was relaxing. I had just washed my hair, and I was feeling overheated. I was thirsty. I had a tremendous thirst on, all of a sudden. Since I lived alone, I had no issue to hop out of the bath and run to the fridge to grab something cold. So that's what I did. I opened the bathroom door and froze in place. I couldn't believe my eyes. There were wet footprints on the carpet. I was in the bath the whole time, and it wasn't raining that night, so I couldn't believe it. Those footprints were not mine. I no longer felt overheated. The footprints led from the bathroom outward into the lounge. I wrapped a towel around myself and cautiously followed those footprints. They went from the bathroom, through the lounge, into the hall, and into my bedroom. They seemed to stop at my bed. My first thought was, oh God, someone has broken in and they are hiding under my bed. So I carefully backed out of the dark bedroom and headed into the kitchen. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen to protect myself. I had no idea what would come next. It was an incredibly tense and stressful situation, but I knew I had to react. I had to do something. I summoned all my courage, stormed into my bedroom, hit the lights, and looked under the bed. There was nothing but a pitch-black empty space staring back at me. No one was there. My heart was racing. I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. I went to the front door and checked that it was locked. It was locked and the chain was on. There was no sign that it had been kicked or tampered with. I was relieved, sure, but the mystery of the wet footprints wasn't resolved. I couldn't escape the fear of the unknown. What the hell was that? I went back to the bathroom, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I quickly rinsed my hair off. Man, that was a horrible couple of seconds. I dried my hair, with my back to the wall, terrified yet trying to compose myself. I had to go to bed, but there was simply no way in hell that I would be sleeping in the dark that night. I got into bed, and surprisingly, I felt as if I wouldn't have much trouble getting to sleep. I guess I was more tired than I realized. I was finally able to fall asleep. I don't know how long I had been asleep for, but I suddenly woke up. I'm not sure if it was because I slept with the light on that night. I usually sleep in the dark, and it's always hard to stay asleep or fall asleep with the light on for me. It was like it was dark outside still. You know that feeling when you wake up in the middle of the night and you feel as if it's morning, but it's not? I guess it was kind of like that. I heard a faint sound coming from somewhere down the hallway. It was the sound of the bathroom door opening. I gripped the covers as tightly as possible. My fingers must have been turning white with the pressure I was applying. I froze. I was praying that it was just my imagination, but I was wrong. I heard what sounded like footsteps next. The footsteps sounded kind of wet. Whatever that was making that noise and had left those footsteps while I was in the bath was now heading towards the bedroom. I guessed that they were coming towards me, just like the footprints I saw when I got out of the bath. They led from the bathroom to the lounge, through the hall, and finally to the bedroom. I cannot describe how terrifying that was. Hearing footsteps in my home coming from the bathroom, I knew that I was the only person in that apartment. I knew that the doors were locked. I knew that there was no one hiding as I had searched while I was armed. The squelchy footprints seemed to mock my belief in logic. They were absolutely unexplainable. They were paranormal. The footsteps didn't rush or move at what I would describe as a normal pace. It was a stilted and slow pace. At some points, I swear, it was as if 10 seconds had passed between each step. All the while, I was in bed trying to rationalize this, hoping that my brain would guide me to an explanation. I tried to believe that I was wrong, maybe hearing things, maybe it was street noise, or even a neighbor, but in my heart I knew that wasn't true. Those footsteps were getting closer and closer, definitely closer. My back was facing my bedroom door, and the covers were over my head. I could sense something approaching. It was spring, but it felt like it was midwinter. If I had popped my head out of the safety of my covers, then I would have seen my breath fog. I'm sure of that. The footsteps were getting louder and louder, and I'm in bed, just screwing my eyes shut as tightly as possible. All I could do was just shiver in bed. The footsteps finally approached my bed, and I felt what I can only describe as a cold gaze on my back. I was very, very aware that I wasn't alone. I know this sounds hard to believe, but what can I say? A couple of agonizing seconds go by, and then something happened. The feeling of being glared at, the icy chill in the room, and the footsteps, they all went away. I then heard something shuffle and maneuver itself under my bed. The room was silent except for one sound. It sounded like something held its breath as it seemed to make itself comfortable under my bed. What could I do? I just stayed silent. I couldn't bear the tension, yet I couldn't summon the bravery to move. How long was I like that? I don't know. Maybe a minute? I say that because that minute definitely felt longer than a minute. An hour, maybe 30 minutes. My perception of time was out the window. Then a horrific sound filled the room, a terrible trill. I knew that sound, and it came from my alarm. I hurriedly reached for my phone and turned the alarm off. I don't know why, but all I can say is that when I woke up, I guess I was asleep maybe, I don't even remember falling asleep. Anyway, when I woke up, it was 6 a.m., and I didn't think that there was a presence under the bed anymore. I took the plunge, and I leaned over the side of my bed, my hair touching the ground, and I peered into the space under the bed. Again, there was nothing but darkness looking back at me. It looked like the space under my bed was a little wet, though. I had to move out after that. It was hell. It wasn't ever as bad as that after that night. But on multiple occasions before I left, I heard doors open, drawers open, and the drip, drip, drip of water in the bathroom. I would love to know what happened in there before I got there, but I'm not in a hurry to research it that much. It was terrifying enough. This happened about 2 years ago. I used the train to get to work, and on my route to the train station, I go through a few streets in my neighborhood. On one of the rundown buildings, on one of the rundown streets I go through, there's occasional graffiti on the walls. It was interesting because it was usually kind of a mosaic block pattern kind of graffiti instead of a tag or a drawing of a body part. My guess is that the graffiti artist, if you could call it art, was using some kind of stencil to achieve the desired results. I had seen other stencil designs in the news before. Tommy Lee Jones from the Boss Coffee adverts, and also Shinzo Abe. So one evening, As I was heading home from work through the streets of my town, I noticed something new on that wall of the building. From a distance, it just looked like a black stain on the wall, but when I got closer, it looked almost recognizable. It looked to me like a QR code. I wondered if my phone would read it if I tried it. I stopped, pulled my phone out of my pocket, and aimed it at the graffiti. The QR code worked. A URL appeared on the screen of my phone. I tapped it, and a low-resolution video began to play. The video wasn't that interesting. It was just a still shot at night of the alley, like someone had filmed the spot where the QR graffiti was. It was boring. I think it lasted for about 30 seconds, and I watched it to the end, and nothing of note happened. The URL was a standard kind of one, some kind of free website service kind of thing. I think the hosting website was called Tripod or something like that. It wasn't of any interest to me. It didn't lead me anywhere, so I thought that I'd just leave it alone. About a week later, I did get a little spooked when I noticed that the same stencil graffiti was on a telephone pole right by my house. It was weird. I was interested in scanning it though. I thought to myself, hey, why not? I was again sent to the same video hosting website. This time the image on screen was bright and the video had been taken in the daytime. For the first time, there was someone in the video. The video had several cuts in it. Every time there was a person holding their phone to the QR code, it would cut to another scene of another person approaching the wall with their phone in hand and arm outstretched, aimed at it. It looked like a collection of clips of people trying to read the QR code. I was all like, oh, maybe it's some advertising campaign or something, but then it dawned on me. Something didn't look right. The camera work was too shaky, not to mention any name of any product. It looked like someone was very deliberately filming whoever approached that wall. I watched with mild amusement and curiosity until I got a bit of a shock. I was among the people captured on that video. I got a chill. I didn't know I was being watched. Whoever filmed me was undoubtedly the person who created the QR code. How could I have missed him? He must have been stood so close to me. It was a really weird experience. I didn't like the idea of someone filming me secretly. What was worse was the fact that I didn't know the purpose of the video. Was it to intimidate me? If it was, then it worked. I double, if not triple checked the door was locked for a while after I saw that video. Fortunately, nothing bad has happened to me though. I wonder if the link had the ability to find out personal details. I don't know, maybe I wasn't what the person who made the QR code was looking for. So if a QR code randomly appears on a wall in your neighborhood, scan the area. Make sure no one's watching you. I've seen something, some kind of creature. It has a very long and curved body, kind of like a praying mantis, I guess. Its head looks like it's upside down. Its neck is grossly elongated. Its face is even worse. It has these mandibles, like the Asian hornet. Despite all this, it looks humanoid, in the sense that it has arms and legs in similar proportions to ours. Its skin is incredibly pale, too pale to be human. The worst thing about the creature I saw was the length of its torso. I haven't seen anything like that in nature. It was too long. It was horribly abnormal. Because this creature's neck is long and bent, it looks like its head is almost upside down. It kind of looks like a lowercase letter F. Its pale skin reminded me of a white birch tree, and I think it was about roughly 3 meters in height. A real giant, almost 10 foot tall. It's kind of thin, like the trees too. I know I sound completely mad to some of you, but please try and keep an open mind. I don't care if you believe me or not. I love going for long bike rides at night, through the mountain roads, on my motorbike, out where the people are scarce, and the woods are vast. I have seen this creature. I saw it by the side of the road a few times. I've seen it more at night. I've also seen that giant gangly creature as I sped past it. It was again by the side of the road, and when I passed it, it shook its limbs like crazy. I think you're safe if you're going fast enough and you see it. Well, maybe. It's a different story if you see it stopped. It hides in the trees and it mimics the patterns of the leaves and branches. It blends in and waits for its prey. My friends and I did some research on those mountain roads where I saw the creature. I found a couple of interesting articles, but there was one in particular that stood out to me. It was a car crash. Doesn't sound that out of the ordinary at first, but there was something about that report that stood out to me. Apparently the body had been torn completely in two. It was like the body had been cut in half. The cause of death was blood loss, indicating that the victim's death wasn't instant. I remember seeing some flowers or something like that by the side of the road near where I saw the cryptid thing. I couldn't help but think that it had something to do with that poor person's death. I mean, the rumor goes that the victim's car wasn't in a bad shape when it was found. Maybe their death has been covered up. What if the victim got out of his car to smoke or to get something from the back seats by the side of the road, and that thing was hiding in the trees and seized its opportunity to snatch its prey? Another interesting thing I heard from an acquaintance was that the cryptid creature had been seen on the outskirts of town, in the suburbs. Apparently it's not just confined to the mountains. It could still be out there, so make sure you're careful whenever you have to pull over by the side of the road. Don't stand too long out there, in the dark, by the trees. I want to tell you about the most mysterious event that has ever happened in my life to date. What happened to us that day was an experience that I can never forget. This experience might not seem all that frightening to some, but to me it's horrible. 3 years ago during summer, I went camping with some friends. We have me, my friend, we will call A, his girlfriend, who we will call Y, and her friend, we will call M. It happened in the mountains of the Chubu region. It was somewhere where my friend A had been before. I was excited to go on a trip with my friends, and the location was supposed to be a little hidden spot off of the beaten track. We departed Osaka and traveled through Kyoto until we got on the national highway. The day we departed was the 10th of August. We were scheduled to camp out in the mountains for 2 nights and head back on the 12th. After getting off of the highway, we entered a few twisty country roads, and then we finally got on the right road. It was incredibly foggy around the mountains that day. I could barely see the road ahead of me. I managed to find a decent enough place to park just off of the side of the road. We then would have to walk for about 40 minutes, according to my friend, with all our camping gear to reach the campsite. But since the visibility outside was so poor, we made a decision to wait for it to clear a little. I mean, it was the mountains. One wrong step and you could be in danger. We killed time in the car by playing some tunes and chatting for a while. The fog wasn't lifting though, and everybody was getting restless, so we decided to head out. We headed into the mountains, through a thick blanket of fog. The order we walked in was as follows. A, my friend who had been there before, Y, his girlfriend, M, her friend, and me bringing up the rear. We walked for about 30 minutes and we agreed it was time to take a break. We found a rocky outcrop to settle down on, and A walked over to me and whispered in my ear, "I think I took a wrong turn." We kind of joked around, and we weren't that upset by it. "I'm sure we should be by a river about now, but it feels like we're still around the base of the mountain, you know? There should have been a fork in the trail. We should have seen that by now." I replied, "I know we've been walking for about 30 minutes, but aren't we going a little bit slower than usual due to all this gear and, the fog, don't you agree?" He looked pretty satisfied with my explanation, and the glimpse of worry I saw in his eyes disappeared. We decided to push on and not turn back to the car. We walked for another 30 minutes, and then we finally reached the riverside, and thankfully by the time we got there, the fog had begun to clear. I looked around and saw everyone's relieved faces amidst the grey of the fog. We got closer to the riverside and found a nice little spot and begun to pitch our tents. Now that the fog had lifted, I could see that the place my friend took us to was actually a really beautiful place. We spent 2 nights there, having a great time. We brought more than enough supplies. It honestly felt like we were the only people there. True bliss. The day we had to leave was fine. It was a really grey kind of morning. The clouds were out and the morning mist quickly began to look like it was going to rain. We hurriedly packed up our things. We hurriedly packed up our stuff in an attempt to not get soaked before we got to the car. The mist was horribly thick. It was more like fog. We walked back for over an hour. I could tell by the stilted conversation that we had had just about enough of being out in the elements. We got back to the car and we got going. I quickly got us back on the highway, back on track. I reached one of the first of many toll gates. There are tons over here, by the way. And on the receipt, I noticed that something was a little off. The date displayed on the receipt read the 11th of August. I was the one driving, and I think I was the only one who noticed it. You know, those toll roads operate on the driver's side. I guess that there was some kind of malfunction with the machine because we set off on the 10th, and we spent 2 nights by the riverside. I put it to the back of my mind. We got further down the highway and my friend's girlfriend, Y, called home. I overheard the conversation she was having and it sounded like it quickly turned into a kind of argument. I guess that she was speaking with one of her parents. There was a bit of an atmosphere in the car after her call had ended. Someone then asked, "What was that about?" She replied with something like the following. "I was so weird. He said that he was surprised that I was coming back home a day early, and I was like, what?" I guess that we all heard the conversation with her dad. And yeah, it was pretty weird. We had a bit of a laugh though, and someone said, "It's not a day early, what? Look at the date on your phone." So we all got our phones out and looked. Why the hell not? My phone said the 12th. My friend's girlfriend's phone, Y, said the 12th. Her friend M's phone said the 12th of August. However, when my friend A checked, his phone said it was the 11th of August. The mood inside the car shifted. Everyone seemed pretty uneasy, and we kept asking each other what was going on. I remembered the slip I got from the toll booth and I showed everyone in the car, and we decided we needed to confirm the date, so we were going to pull over at the next gas station. I walked into the store they had there and asked the clerk, "Hey buddy, what's the date today?" "It's the 11th, he replied with a smile. I was shocked. I took a quick glance at the newspapers in the store, and they all said it was the 11th of August as well. I got my phone out and started making calls. I asked my brother, one of my friends, my mum, and everyone said that it was the 11th of August. I couldn't believe it. We left on the 10th, and after 2 full days. It was the 11th, but it couldn't be possible. The girls then started crying. I remember something suddenly, the reason why A's phone was showing the 12th and ours wasn't. He was complaining about having no signal or no battery or something, so he said he would leave his phone in my car. Something happened when we entered the fog. It was like time stood still for a day in there. We all believe that it was something to do with the fog. As a result, we got 1 extra day of holiday and life. So we should count ourselves lucky, I guess. I mentioned it to some people, but I felt like they either didn't believe me or tried to convince me that I had been mistaken. I thought that I'd just share my story here. If it's not that creepy to you, sorry, but it's scary as hell to me. Hi everyone, thank you so much for watching. I think that I'm going to make this a regular feature, a viewer suggestion kind of video every now and then. So, if you are interested in participating and sharing your ideas, please keep an eye on the community tab, because that's where I usually ask, hey, what does everybody want to watch? And in this video I chose the following suggestions. We wanted a ghost story, we wanted a missing time story, a cryptid story, and one involving technology, I believe. So, yeah, if this was one of your suggestions, well done. And if not, keep an eye on the community tab, and I'll make it so next time. Anyway, thanks so much for watching and listening. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, or not. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon.